My guest on today's episode is the host of the Marketing Book Podcast. And this is the resource for marketers and salespeople looking for business books to help them stay up with the times and find new ideas to do things better, smarter, and faster. You'll hear what he's learned over his 360 something episodes, some common themes, and his best bets for books that you should be reading right now. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now on with our podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. I'm joined today by Douglas Burdett. He's the host of the Marketing Book Podcast. He's also the principal and founder of Artillery, which is a B2B marketing agency that enjoys working with manufacturers and industrial companies. Welcome to the show, Douglas.
Good to be here. Good to reconnect with you.
I know we almost had trouble hitting record on this because we had so much fun catching up and talking about all of our.
So we only have about 5 minutes for the interview now.
Right, that's right. We'll have to talk really, really fast. No, it's good to see you and talk to you again. What have you been up to this summer?
Well, I still do the podcast. I interview one author a week, but believe it or not, we were in an office for the last office for 16 years, really cool space. And then the lockdown happened and it started collecting a lot of dust. And finally, last August, I didn't renew the lease. I said, all right, I guess maybe we should have been doing this remotely all along. And so what happened was I would think, I'm going to save a lot of money on the lease. But what happened is I'm now back in my home here in Virginia in this 1908 house. And I had to start, I could no longer ignore the house the way I did when I had an office. So like I can remember a couple of years ago, my wife was saying, up on the third floor, I think it's leaking up there. And it's like, I remember filing that away and other things. And so, then apparently with a 110-year-old house, you're supposed to have the slate roof repaired and you're supposed to
on occasion, appliances. That's smart.
Yeah. So it's become, so I've actually started paying attention to the house and it's fine. It's nice. I secretly kind of like working from home, but I really can't wait to get back out to, like, if I get to give a talk, to do it in person. I think doing things on Zoom is not just a conversation, but a presentation. I really find that more torturous than most. And it may be because one of the other things, to answer your question, I did when the lockdown happened is I took a stand-up comedy course from the Armed Services Arts Partnership, where they do all kinds of creative things with military veterans like myself. And they had one on stand-up comedy, and I had done one years ago and performed. But this time they had to do it all over Zoom. And I
seems very tough over Zoom.
Well, because they would critique you afterwards. It was really well done. They were just trying to do it on Zoom, but they'd done in person. And what happened was they would start critiquing all your material and your jokes, which is very helpful. But I kept wanting to say, yeah, but is this even funny?
Right.
Because I don't get any feedback from all the other people on that screen there, because they're all doing what you're probably doing right now, which is checking Facebook. But anyway, that's what I've been up to.
How
Wendy.
Did you guess? No. Looking straight at you, Douglas, looking straight at you. And maybe my questions, maybe I'll cheat a little bit there. So,
okay.
Well, the Marketing Book Podcast Oh my gosh, it just keeps growing and growing. And I don't know any marketers at this point that haven't found it and listened to it. So, how many subscribers or listeners do you have? How do you measure success with it?
Well, it's funny. I was asked that once by one of the authors I interviewed a couple times over the years, and he said, "Are you making any money with your podcast?" Naturally, he was an author of a sales book, and I said, "Well, maybe indirectly, but I hated to admit it. I said, it's not really why I started it.
Yeah.
I started it for very personal reasons, which I can explain, but there's been I've been doing it for, since the January of 2015. And last week, I think I published episode 346. So every Friday, I publish an
Wow.
interview with the author of a new marketing or sales book.
Yeah.
And about the first 10 books on the show, I had already read. And then I got to about the 11th book and I realized, oh, Douglas, I didn't realize I was actually going to need to read every book
And
featured
to
on the
keep that
show.
pace
Yeah,
of
well,
weekly.
but I'll tell you in a minute why it's so important to me personally, but it's only one a week. And I love reading the books. And now I have, like, I think there's been over 2 million downloads and it's got listeners in over, I don't know, 150 countries. But I hear from people every day now around the world saying, "Hey, I've been listening to your show and I really appreciate it. And it's really been helpful, or it helped me get a new job," or a lot of people contact me, and I would urge your audience to do the same. And they'll say, "Is there a specific book that I could read about regarding this topic or that topic?"
Mm.
And if I can help anyone, even Wendy Covey, from having to read 350 books to find the right one or two, it makes me happy. And matter of fact, sometimes people come along and say, "Hey, we market to a technical audience or we market to engineers." And I'm like, "Okay, here we go. I got
I got the
3
book.
books." And one of them is by you. One of them is by Rebecca. And then there was another fella that, who wrote Bruce McDuffie. He wrote The New Way to Market for Manufacturers.
Mhm.
Um, But then there are lots of other books because industrial companies or manufacturers, or maybe a lot of the people that are listening to this conversation, even though they're in those fields, they might be struggling with a very specific issue. And I can recommend a different book. Like they'll say for a lot of folks like that in that industry, they'll say, "Have there been, can you talk to me about channel sales? Or what about channel marketing?" Boom. I got books on both, that have been on the show. They're
Yeah,
really,
and that's
really
very
excellent.
specific. Sure. I mean, if you
Yeah. So
think of there's a long tail of marketing right there, right?
yeah. So, and it makes me happy knowing that I can do that for folks. But I guess to finish the thought was, the reason I started the podcast is because when I said I wasn't starting it to make money, I guess we're all supposed to be doing that. But I came from a real advertising background. When I say real advertising, I worked at my first 10 years at these enormous ad agencies in New York City. And then I moved to Virginia, worked at a firm, and then finally started my own firm. And it was very much advertising focused: television, radio, print, all that sort of thing. If they needed something else, we would bolt on websites or, some PR work or whatever. And then, like a lot of industries, where wasn't the only one. I started to suddenly notice that advertising was becoming a shadow of its former self.
Mhm.
And I thought, "Oh no, what am I going to do?" And so I did what I had done back in grad school, where I, read a lot of books to try and figure out what I wanted to do now that I was out of the Army. And, I found a book on advertising and I said, "That's what I want to do." So anyway, went back to reading books thinking, "Gosh, I'm too young and to retire. And where's all this going?" I stumbled upon one of the early editions of David Meerman Scott's book, The New Rules of Marketing and
Oh,
PR.
yes, of course.
And just had a really big impact, because the right book at the right time can do that. I think most people can realize, "Oh, there was a book I read at this point in my life and it pointed me in the right direction." And so I read that and I just thought, "Oh, that's where it's all going." And I felt like I had a second bite at the career apple. And I really didn't like feeling like a dinosaur, perhaps more than some people do. I mean, I felt like I was growing dinosaur scales. Like when I would have to bring website people to client meetings, it's like, wait a minute, used to be all about the advertising. And I just really, it really bothered me. And so anyway, I had read a lot of these books, and I'd gotten to meet some of these authors at some conferences, probably some of the same ones you've attended. And I just loved listening to marketing podcasts, particularly podcasts where they interviewed authors. And I thought, I'm going to try that. You know how entrepreneurs are. We just go and try something crazy. And it's not like anybody said, don't go do that, because that would have really motivated me. And one day I looked up, I saw marketingbookpodcast.com was available, and I thought, I'm going to do that. Let's give
That's
it a try.
me.
So,
Yeah.
so the point is that I really was stung or bothered by not feeling like I was doing something to keep up with what's going on in this world that is changing. And the reason all this marketing and sales is changing so much is because the way that people can buy has changed dramatically. That's why. And a lot of companies, particularly industrial companies, manufacturers, really are struggling with understanding that and kind of making that change to a new generation of buyers. So that's why I do it, is I know I'm helping people. I love doing it. I'm a bit of a ham, the stand-up comedy.
Just a touch of a hand. Just a little bit.
Right.
You know what? I think you'll appreciate this. My guest I had on, I guess, a few weeks ago, was talking about imposter syndrome. And it's the same thing. He said, I look back at my marketing degree, and by the way, this person's a millennial, so younger than us both. And he said, boy, the principles I learned, they barely apply now. And so it's having to relearn how to market, relearn this world. And then at the same time, of course, when you're a marketer in a technical company, you're having to have this other very difficult ramp up, learning those products and applications and those technical buyers and what their needs are. So there's a lot to keep up with.
That's very real situation. Yeah, it is.
So every week you read a book. Every week I'm trying to just wrap my head around how you digest that, how you, what are some tips for people who are cracking open a marketing book that what keeps you going? How do you stay engaged with it? Is it easy to stay engaged with it? There are times when it's not.
Well, first off, I can see, if for those who are watching the video version, there's a couple of shells there behind Wendy with deer antlers.
Yes.
So I just want you to know I'm a deer hunter, and the deer are much safer now because, at least during hunting season, I'll get up in a deer stand and I bring that week's book with me. Yeah. And there have been a number of times where I get so engrossed in it, and I look up and a deer's looking at me like, you're a loser. You're not even gonna no. But you work it into your routine. It's like my kids are in their 20s, and they've both run away from home now that they're out of college. Most parents complain about their kids who won't leave home. Both of my kids said, Dad, we kind of need to move on.
It's time. It's time.
So I don't have the small children, and you work it in. I probably spend the same amount of time working out and playing around as I do reading the book. It's a few hours, on the weekend. I read about half of it on the weekend, and maybe 2 other mornings before work, I'll finish the book. But it's kind of a process. And I guess the audience is my accountability partner, because a lot of people talk about how they walk their dogs on Friday morning, and they hear that interview. So I just sort of worked it into my schedule, and also I enjoy it, and I'm very interested in ideas. And the other thing is that I have such admiration for people who write books, people like Wendy Covey. I will probably not write a book because I'm too busy reading them. But I just have this admiration for people that write these books that I find so incredibly helpful and inspiring. And I still get excited at the idea of being able to read a book and then talk to an author and ask them, really stupid questions, tell stupid jokes, And
You
people seem,
ask wonderful questions and tell corny jokes. So
yes,
that's how I see it on your show.
right. Well, but there are so many things I find in books that are so helpful. Like in particularly in your book, there was one section that honestly was one of those things that was like worth the price of the book. And there is no greater ROI than buying a book, a business book anyway, and reading it and applying some of that. It's so good for business. It's so good for someone's career. But there was that one section in your book that talked about all the different ways that marketing can help sales. I don't know. I should have gotten it off the shelf here, but it's that sort of thing. And I was just,
Yeah.
it drove me crazy. It's the kind of thing that gets me excited. So
Good,
anyway,
good. And you know what? Several people have commented on that same table, on that same information. And I had a book partner when I wrote, someone from True Marketing that was super smart, that was just my partner. We bounce off of each other. I work really well in collaboration with someone. And that was her idea of give some specifics of how marketing can help sales, like brass tacks,
uh-huh.
lay it out there. And so I'm glad that it resonated. That's
Yeah, certainly with me. And I hear from so many listeners and people talking about their challenges. And um, so anyway, that's a long-winded answer to, how I do it. I enjoy
yeah.
doing it. I enjoy learning these things. The one thing I hate about the podcast, not hate, but the one thing that I dislike about the podcast, and it's come up more and more, is that because the podcast has been around for a while, I get books now, a few books every week. And having to say no to an author who's
Mhm.
written a book where it's not really a fit. There's even a
Yeah.
video on the website now saying these are the kind of books, you know, and having to say no, it's a good book, but it's just not what, I don't know. I hate having to say it because I have such admiration for folks that write these books, and I'm
Well,
like their biggest fan. So
you
I'm
know,
no sports reporter that can't believe I get to interview these sports stars. So
well, you're
there you go.
curating. So I think we all appreciate that you're not just saying yes to anyone. You're really being thoughtful
Yeah.
and curating the right information that keeps us all coming back every week.
Yeah,
Um,
that's an excellent way to put it. And actually, when I started the podcast, the only thing I was worried about is that there wouldn't be 52 books every year about this, marketing. And I've had about 50 books on sales on the show, but there are lots of books. And now I've heard from listeners over the years, and they've said, Douglas, if the book is on your show, I'm much more likely to buy it. Now,
mhm.
part of that is because they listen to the author do most of the talking and decide, this might be a fit or not a fit. But so now I feel it's a wonderful problem to have, but I feel this pressure to really pick books that are going to be a good investment for the listener as well. So
Good. So 300 and what was it? 346?
346, I think. Yeah.
Okay. That is okay. So 346 books. So
Yeah.
out of those, what are some of the biggest, most important recurring themes that you've noticed?
Well, I'm going to borrow from some presentations I've given over the years that are the recurring themes. That's a great question. And there's, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. There's there's some sort of similar analogy for all these books. And like when I talk to a group of marketers, and I've got to believe you've got a lot of marketers working or listening to your show. One thing that has come up, not a whole lot, but I've really taken notice, is that marketers have an image problem. And rightly or wrongly, a lot of, let's say, a salesperson or a CEO, a head of sales, somebody like your husband, they think marketing is arts and crafts party planning. And it's, people who work in the make it pretty department, or as all the British authors say, the coloring in department. And that's not
Mhm.
really fair, and it's not really true, but it doesn't really matter because that's the perception.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of things that marketers talk about that I think they probably shouldn't talk about in front of civilians. And when I say civilians, I mean people not in the marketing department, because they
Completely
actually have very
agree.
different things they're concerned about.
Yeah.
Profitability, pipeline, revenue, distribution, things like that. And all those things are important, but like, I don't think a lot of marketers help themselves by saying words like branding, storytelling, content marketing. I mean, even though that your topic of your book is
Or
about that,
even open rates, even, these little
click-through rates,
tactical things.
website traffic, all this is
Yeah.
interesting stuff, but that's a metric that, anyway, there have been a few books over the years that talk about specifically, this is what marketers need to focus on. This is what they need to be saying. And it can help them increase their, it can help them get a place at the table, the strategic table. So that's one. Another thing is that that was just for the marketers. Okay. That was just special for the marketing folks. The reason that I have so many sales books on the show is because I think some of the best, most successful marketers have a deep understanding of sales, selling, the sales process, and more importantly, the way that people buy. You see, it's not like we can't all be like Wendy Covey, married to a sales executive. Okay. So they need to spend time with salespeople and really understand the way the people are buying. And the most successful companies, the most successful marketers, and this is 100% guaranteed, I can back it up. Those companies are the ones that have the deepest insights into their buyers. They simply understand their buyers more. And they don't go to their customers or prospects and say, what do you want? They have a deep understanding. And if I'm not mistaken, you talked about buyer personas in your book, which is, one of my favorite topics, but it's basically just understanding these people like you would maybe as an ethnographer or an anthropologist would. And even like a company like Amazon, they, Jeff Bezos, so the story goes, he goes to the meetings and conference rooms, and he always wants, or apparently he wants to have one empty seat there. And that seat represents the customer. And he's apparently at some of these meetings, he's pointed at that seat and said, no, guys, that's not what she wants. Are we forgetting somebody here? Even a big company like that is having to, reinforce, we got to stay focused on what our customer wants. What are their latent anxieties and desires? Okay. So that's one that's come up a lot. And there have been a number of books on the show over the years that basically show you how to do all this great work, grow your business, grow your revenue. And the linchpin of so many of them is talk to your customers.
Yes. Know who they are.
Marketers, don't just talk to the sales team.
No.
Go talk to the customers. It's really, it's remarkable. So another thing is that, at least for the marketers anyway, the most successful ones have a company first mindset. So it's kind of like goes back to, okay, be careful what you're saying, be conscious of the image you have. So, I mean, it'd be like Wendy Covey, you went to Texas A&M, you probably have a certain perception of people who went to the University of Texas. Okay. And we're not going to get into that. And they may not be accurate, but you just have a certain perception of them. It's the same way with people thinking about marketers. They think it's all about promotion. They don't understand that a lot of marketing has to do with pricing and product development and all those kinds of things. So the more that marketers can get into the revenue camp, the better. Like I was talking about. Another thing that has come up throughout many books is that the experience that your customers have with your company is just about your most powerful marketing. And while marketers can't control the experience completely that, prospects or customers have with them, they at least advocate for it. So there was a book on the show a while back by Lee Sauls. I'm about to interview him about another one. His book was called Sales Differentiation. And he explained that, the way there are certain things companies can do to differentiate themselves, and they should. It has very little to do with what their marketing says. It has more to do with the way they run the business. But he said one of the greatest differentiators a company has is the way they sell. And if you can engineer a better sales process or an experience that your customers like, there was another book on the show a while back called Sell the Way You Buy, trying to urge companies to think about, do you really like spamming and annoying people? Why don't you try helping them make an informed decision. So the customer experience is really, really important. And I think a lot of companies aren't still understanding that. And I'll give you an example that's, maybe a little tired, but, Disney or a lot of the hospitality brands are very focused on what is the experience people have. They really train the person at the desk to think about, how is this making the person feel? How are we solving their problem? It involves, a lot of that has more to do with your HR department than your marketing department. Your most important branding department is probably HR. Who is it you're trying to attract to your company? How are you training them? How are you treating your employees? It's a big indicator of how you treat your customers. But the reason this is so much more important now is that if you irritated companies, you made a bad purchase, maybe you could tell a few neighbors, but now you can tell the world. You really can. United Airlines smashed up a guitarist's guitar, and they said, "Hey, tough luck." Well, unfortunately, he's a really good songwriter and guitarist. He wrote a song called United Breaks Guitars, got millions of downloads, made the price of their stock drop 10%.
Wow.
That's an extreme case, but everyone, and not only that, people believe what a company says very little, particularly advertising. They do trust much more. They trust recommendations from friends. They, or even reviews. They trust reviews or opinions of total strangers more than they trust what a company says. They have great respect for influencers, people who are experts who have built an audience and kind of evaluate different things. So that is one of the other ones. Let me just see. There was a couple others that have been recurring. That was one. The other thing, and again, this is more for the marketers out there, but I guess the salespeople as well, is that the most successful marketers, most successful executives really have a practice of wanting to learn. They're self-educators. And there was a book on the show, which was one of what I call currently there's 5 books out of 350 or so that were very specific about how to be more successful at marketing. And these are written by very experienced people saying, this is what the modern marketers are doing. They are, they're like leaders. And when I say leader, it's not like a commander. They are almost like evangelists or teachers going into their organizations, showing what's possible and trying to help lead through influence the company in the right direction. And they end up getting a lot of stature within their organization by leading. In other words, if you're maybe a junior marketer and you're saying, well, that's what they told me what to do, you're not going to make it as a marketer. You've got to have a certain amount of initiative and leadership, have a company first mindset, and then help people discover why the things that you're advocating for can actually help. Like, for example, helping your organization slowly understand why paying attention to customer experience is such a great idea. People want to buy more from you. They, if they've already become a customer, and they tell other people. And anyway, so those are a few. But the ones that there was a book called Marketing Flexology by Angelina Jaspers, and that was one of the 5 books that I've had on so far. They're very much about marketers. And she looked back over a 40-year career at, what were the traits of the really successful marketers? And she's worked at international firms as a marketer, very impressive career. And there were a few things that, like about 3 traits. And one of the traits that the most successful marketers had were that they had a learning mentality. They were self-educators. And she even quotes another study, and I can't recall which one it was, but even an enormous number of CEOs have this trait, where they are self-educating, they're reading, they're not relying on someone else to tell them what to go learn. And she explains that companies actually are spending less now training their employees. But there's never been a time that's better than this for learning on your own. I mean, if you think about all the resources, I mean, you can listen to this. You can listen to some knucklehead with a podcast where he interviews authors of marketing and sales books and get a lot of that. And it's free, people.
Exactly.
Or, like we both use software from HubSpot. They have all these great free certifications. They're not even about their product. They're just teaching people how to become better marketers. Google has great certifications. There's a lot of ways to educate yourself to really empower your career.
Yeah.
So earlier on, you were talking about a younger person who said, this isn't even related to what I'm studying or what I studied. In fact, once some years back, we had a number of students from the local university who came and helped out as interns, and we would have them all take the the inbound certification just to kind of get them up to speed, help them learn while they were helping us work. And I remember this one senior who was a marketing and analytics major, and he took the whole thing and he said, I don't think I learned any of this in school. Maybe he did, but it put it together. So there's a lot of great ways for people to invest in their own future by learning. And that's actually one of the a few things you can control.
It is. And sometimes it comes down to how that information is packaged and presented. And, courses like HubSpot have such a tie back to the business and showing that flywheel or funnel or whatever terminology HubSpot likes to use these days. That makes, I think, a huge difference. We'll have these candidates that'll apply for positions at TREW Marketing that are just completing their MBA, and they've never really been practitioners of marketing. And it makes us very nervous because the expectation is that they'll want to come in and be a strategist and affect strategy. But by the same token, okay, where's that resourcefulness? Where's the practical knowledge that you actually know how to go implement that strategy and know what it takes and know what those best practices are? So I like what you're advocating here.
There's a real disconnect there. And I say that because I know that there are a lot of academics, marketing professors who are doing everything they can to keep up. I have a friend who teaches, he's a PhD, he teaches at the graduate level. And I remember he was saying, a lot of these academics, they're doing everything they can to keep up.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's a struggle. And I said, hey, businesses are struggling to keep up too. So it's quite a bit of a change. It's just one of those lines of work where you kind of have to have ongoing education. I don't think it's that different from a person who is in maybe a medical field where they need to have some sort of continuing education because there's so many new things and advancements coming along. The one thing I would caution folks on, though, is that, as you know, there are maybe 10,000 marketing and sales software programs out there now, the tech explosion of MarTech. Try to resist chasing all the shiny objects. Do what you can to learn more about strategy and what you're trying to accomplish as a business, rather than seeking salvation in a tool. It's really not that much different from someone who joins a gym in January with the best intentions of, New Year's resolutions, and it doesn't really work out. You actually have to go to the gym and exercise and watch what you're eating. So.
And have a plan and have goals and measurement.
Exactly.
All that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
The gear is just
I don't
one
know.
aspect.
You may find that as well as I do, but I know this is turning into a support group. For that, I apologize, but I'm a Ron Burgundy glass case of emotion now. See what Wendy's done to me. There are an awful lot of companies or at least marketers, who do not know what it is their company's trying to accomplish, or the company doesn't have very good plans. And they look upon marketing and all these, which has become very complicated, as sort of like buying a lottery ticket. Like, oh, let me just write a check and something will happen.
It's so true. Yes. And there's only so much a marketer can do in that situation when there's not a sound business strategy, or there's not products that are going to go anywhere, or an internal environment where marketing is just never going to be respected. And there's some of that too.
Yeah. And I see it all the time, and it's almost like we'll stop here. But a lot of companies are coming and they're trying to self-diagnose, which I'm sure we all do. I mean, if we go to the doctor and say, I think I have this, they'll say, well, let me ask you a few questions. but they're self-diagnosing and they think they want help with something. And it's usually something a little further upstream that they need to, they need to work on. I'll give you an example. If you are churning through your customers and you're treating them badly, I'm sorry, but marketing is not going to be able to help much with that. Maybe improve your product to the point where people want to talk about it with their friends. It's almost like some of the things we do in the agency world. I almost don't want them to do that first. You know what I mean? It's like, well, let's get a few other things tied down here before, because we're actually going to accentuate the problem.
Yeah.
There's an expression, nothing kills a bad product. Well, back from my ad days, nothing kills a bad product faster than really great advertising.
Exactly. Well, and we have just a few minutes left, and I want to do a lightning round on industrial and manufacturing marketing. Since both you and I play in this space, it's a very unique space, as you know. And I'm curious on your take, what are some of the ways that this technical buyer is completely different than your typical B2B buyer?
Well, first off, I think people should read your book and Rebecca's, and they'll really understand that. And no, I'm to the audience, she did not put me up to saying that.
No, but I love it.
They are different. They are different. And the buyers do not want to be pitched or sold to. Don't go there, girlfriend. They want information. They want it to be correct. Being technically correct is very important to them. They want the information. Another way that these industrial folks or companies are different, a couple of things that I really like about them, which is why we enjoy working with them. Okay, I know a lot of people are always beating up on it, but one thing is that I have just found that maybe it's because there's a lot of engineers working there. They understand planning a little better, and I think they understand systems, particularly mechanical engineers. They understand systems, and I think that works so beautifully with modern marketing, where you're building a system, you're helping build an engine, and I find that they're more realistic in terms of planning. In other words, and I may be wrong here, but my sense of having dealt with a certain number of software as a service companies, particularly startups, and we don't really work with startups anymore, but it's like they are in fact trying to win the lottery. It's like, I want 100% growth in 6 months. Great. What's your normal sales cycle? 18 months. Okay. But it's sort of like, no, I want to hit it big. I want to be the next whatever. And it just seems unrealistic. Whereas the industrial companies and the manufacturers, they understand planning. I just think they understand how to plan ahead. And they're also keener on like following the ideas of Deming, where it's constant iteration, constant improvement. That works beautifully in marketing now.
Yes.
Particularly when you're dealing with there's a lot of moving parts now. Okay. And so that's one thing that I particularly like. And I hope that they don't change that. One thing, however, okay, yes, I'm kind of going into another question. I know you were going to ask about the common mistakes, but it's not just industrial folks and manufacturers, but there's a couple things. One of them may be generational, where just the other day, about a month ago, I was talking to the CEO of a company, and they're in the gas turbine controls business. And he was the CEO of another company. He sold it. He was on the board of this other company. He was brought in, and they said, can you be the CEO here? Because the founder was still there, and he had a very different skill set. Founders often have very different skill sets from running an existing business. That's an observation, not a criticism. And the founder's still there, but he's just on the board. And he's inherited a sales team. And basically their attitude is, when something's wrong, the customer will call us. No, there's like no prospecting. There's no way to try to show them that you're trying to help their business. So there's this sort of reactive approach of, they'll call us when something's broken. And it's like, that is so 1985. And so that's a problem. And I sometimes think it's more prevalent in that world, the industrial, the manufacturing folks. They'll call us. I mean, who else are they going to call? Well, you know what? They do have options. And all they're doing is I can remember he said, and they can't get through either. Well, why do you think they can't get through? Because they're not adding any value. All they're doing is calling up saying, anything broken yet?
Yeah. You want to buy some more stuff?
Yeah. You want to buy some more stuff? There's very different ways to do that, folks.
Yeah.
Read Wendy's books. She'll explain how to do it. So that is one. But also, and again, this isn't just industrial and manufacturing companies, but way too much focus on their products. I gave a talk once at a big manufacturing gathering in Chicago, and I can't believe they agreed to let me talk on this subject. And I thought they were going to throw me off the stage, but the subject of the talk was, the title of the talk was, Stop Talking About Your Products First. And
so
they were very receptive, but I had to explain why you shouldn't talk about your products first. But it is actually counterproductive.
They're the best
hurts.
products ever. Look at the frequency and the resolution. I mean, come on, we have the best specs, Douglas. I mean, it'll sell itself, won't it?
Yeah, it'll sell itself. No, it won't. And in fact, and as any number of books I can point folks to about why that is such a bad idea. But it actually signals that you aren't concerned about them, I would argue. If you can focus on what is bothering them or what they want to achieve more from an emotional standpoint, it's much easier. There was a book on the show recently called Humanizing B2B, which beautifully explained this. They were explaining that a business to business purchase, like a lot of the folks that listen or your audience, it's actually much more emotional than buying a bad roofing job. Since I mentioned that, I had a very good slate roofing company take care of this, but
good.
In other words, that would have been on me, or my wife would have said, God, you're a loser. I put you in charge of this. Look what you did. But if you buy the wrong thing for your company, it affects your company's profitability, perhaps your company's future if it's a big enough purchase. It really affects your reputation for the rest of your career. It could. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was one book called Roadmap to Revenue by Kristen Zavago, where she jokes that she really got into the psyche of the people that buy on a business to business standpoint, and they all had this invisible whiteboard on a string around their neck, and on it is written down the really bad buying decisions they made. It's a very emotional decision, making one of these purchases. So I think that it also, there's so many reasons why it's not a good idea to lead with that, but instead to focus on what it is your folks want. But also it's a great way to, okay, we'll include a link to my interview with Wendy about her book. But by producing some content that you can share with your prospects or your customers, it starts to elevate your position as an expert and as somebody who starts to understand that you really get me. You seem to understand me. I'm sure they think your product is fine, but really that's not the primary reason they're buying it. And so anyway, when you're able to focus a little bit more on the fears and the anxieties and the uncertainty that your customers are facing, just a little bit better than your competition, it gives you such an unfair advantage. So, and I know this sounds a little touchy-feely, but there's plenty of books that talk about the science behind why your customer's brain behaves that way. So I don't know, I'm about to break this soapbox I'm standing on, but those are some of the most common mistakes that I see companies in that sector doing. In other words, they're talking about themselves and their products. And I understand completely why companies want to do that. They are enormously proud of their products. In fact, their products are very likely over-engineered, but really good products are pretty much table stakes now. You're not going to survive very long with a really bad product. or service, technical service. So anyway, once again, Wendy Covey has got me whipped into a lather. Congratulations. Well
Oh,
played.
no, well, congratulations to you, sir, on so many books under your belt, so much knowledge. And this was wonderful. This was very enlightening. If there's one book, and I'm not talking about mine, I mean broader, because of course I'm going to say mine, but not mine.
Yes.
What's the one book? This is kind of like your parting advice here, that every marketer that feels a little bit behind in how things are done today, feels like that, degree is a bit out of date. What's that one book they need to start with? Or is there just one?
Well, you would think there'd be a book by people I've interviewed like Seth Godin or, Robert Cialdini, the author of Influence, or Philip Kotler, the father of modern marketing. But actually the best book was written by an author you may not know called Sarah Cooper. And it's called 100 Tricks to Appear Smart in Meetings: How to Get By Without Even Trying.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm a joker. That was actually a special April Fool's Day episode, but it was a hilarious book where she says she has 100 tricks in her book. She was an engineer. She was a computer engineer. She worked at Yahoo and Google, and then she became a comedian. But like one of the examples in her books is when translate percentages into fractions. So if somebody's pointing at a screen, they say, about 25% of visitors to this page click on that button. You then say, so about 1 in 4. Your math skills will be the envy of everyone in that room. No, I'm kidding.
My.
So, or another trick, I'll get to a real answer in a second. Another trick is when someone's giving a presentation and you're not really paying attention, ask the presenter to go back a slide. Everyone will think you're really paying attention. And then you say, okay, good, thanks. I mean, don't do it on the first slide, people. Come on, you do need to think about this. But then you can go back to playing Candy Crush or looking at Instagram. No, I think one book.
You know what? This book belongs in like the office bathroom. It sounds like.
Yes. I have. What's funny is that I actually have, this year she came out with a daily calendar.
Oh boy. And
it's really funny. And I have a client I sent that book to for Christmas one year, and he has to go to a lot of meetings, and they're not like a director's meeting where a lot of it's not about him. And to keep his sanity, he would open the book up before he went into the meeting and pick out one of the tricks, and then he would do it in the meeting, and just nobody ever caught on.
Yeah.
So
party trick.
It's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to recommend a book. If anyone has like a specific challenge they have, please connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll get you pointed in the right direction. Even if it's one I haven't had on the show, but I certain resources. I love being able to help folks. A great book for somebody, let's say, that is maybe new to marketing or new to sales, that is one of my favorites, is by the author I mentioned earlier, David Meerman Scott. The New Rules of Marketing and PR, I think, is such a great, and make sure to get the 7th edition.
Okay.
He updates that every 2 years because he has to, because it's changing so much. And it's a 400-page book, but you read that one. I've heard from a lot of people who said, oh, great, thank you. That helps pull it all together, just like it did for me. So I think that's a great one. But if there's others than the 3 about engineering and technical audiences that I mentioned. So is that the kind of book you were looking for?
Absolutely. That was exactly what I was looking for. And I expected that answer. So you fell into my trap.
Well, otherwise I could recommend 350. And the reason I say that is because I get excited about the books, and it's because they're really good books. Because I get to pick which books are on the show. So I'm already excited about them.
Yeah. Well, my recommendation is just listen to your show and hear about these books and decide from there, hear what the authors have to say.
Wendy, if you listen to the Marketing Book Podcast, it will actually make you a more attractive person. And I say that because I've done a lot of research. I know you have very technical audiences listening to this. I have the most attractive listeners in all of podcast land. That is science. Okay.
It's right there.
I can
Science.
back it up. No, I've met many of these people and they are very good looking people. So
Well,
I think
there
they're
you
also rather successful people from what I gather because they're into self-education.
So we need an author beauty pageant is what I just heard. Make a
it's going to be,
calendar. One of those
it's going to be
calendars.
hard. Well, no, I think the listeners are the guests they are the beautiful people, but the listeners are very good looking people. So
I see.
just want to,
There you go. If you
put that out
listen,
there.
automatically means I hear you. I hear you.
That's right.
Well, where can folks find you and connect with you?
Well, on LinkedIn, my name is Douglas Burdett, and connect with me. Just a pro tip, try to include a message when you connect with someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I heard you on Wendy's podcast, so I'll know you're not a filthy spammer. And you can, in fact, do that from your phone if you're sending them out. But I'd love to hear from folks, particularly if I can help suggest a couple of books or resources. It's kind of the fun thing I get to do. And I don't, just hear from a few people every day. On Twitter, I'm Marketing Book, and you can find the podcast website if you go to marketingbookpodcast.com. That's part of our artillery site, but I want to send folks to the podcast section so they can find that.
All right, great. Well, it was wonderful seeing you, talking to you again today, catching up, hearing your wonderful corny jokes. It's all Douglas all day long.
Thank you. And you know what? My family thanks you because this has been like Doug daycare. This is an hour where they didn't have to talk to me. Okay.
Perfect. I gave him a break. You're welcome.
Your star is
No
rising,
problem.
Wendy.
All right. Well, I'm turning
All
you
right.
back over to the family now.
All right. Go Aggies.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit truemarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our e-newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.